Hello and welcome to the 12 Months to Marathon podcast with me, John Hill, the running podcast for the over 35s with Marathon Dreams, episode 38, Peak Week Panic. So what's going on with me at the moment? So as you know, I was very ill after my marathon on the 16th of March, had old school flu with all the trimmings. We are starting to turn the corner now actually. As I record this, it's Thursday the 3rd of April. I am starting to feel a bit normal again. I've been for a couple of runs at a pace very similar to what I would usually run at for my easy runs and it's felt good. And I think a lesson I want to say, or a lesson I want to give, should I say, is that just remember who's in control and you're in control. And I think sometimes we overly focus on problems and we talk too much about problems. Now, I've talked a lot about this because I was quite ill. I was really quite ill. I think my temperature was 41 at one point. So, yeah, I was really quite ill at one point. So, it's easy for us to talk about that, which is fine. But people, A, will get sick of it eventually. And B, misery loves company. So, it's, you know, you want to move to a solution base as quick as possible, which is what I did. So, yeah, it's been an interesting one. It was timed very well because it came after my marathon. But, yeah, starting to turn the corner now. And then in just about a month's time as I record this, I've got the Birmingham Half Marathon, which is a fab event which I do every year, which I'll do again. So what I wanted to talk about this week was Peak Week Panic, because I've had some questions in my running community and my running coaching group, because a lot of the guys in there are doing their marathons at the end of April. And for a lot of them, it's their first marathon as well. So we've got Manchester and London are the two big ones at the end of April. Then we've got sort of some at the start of May as well. So one of the key challenges that people face is when they hit what are called the peak weeks, right? Now, usually your peak weeks are anywhere from week 9 to week 14 in marathon training, but usually week 10 to 14. There are probably 3 weeks in there that are in a technical term, quite tasty. Now, when I did my marathon training plan that I follow, which is a sub 3 plan, the 3 weeks of, I think it's a 12, 13 and 14, no, 11, 12 and 13, sorry. In those 3 weeks, there are 2 20-milers and a 22-miler, plus all the relevant speed work and things like that. So it's big on volume. Now, the reason why you have those peak weeks is because I think it's preparing you optimally to become a marathon runner. Now, I'm quite an honest person, I think, and I like to share warts and all, and I get some criticism on Instagram, 12 Months to Marathon. Don't forget to follow me over there. And one of the, what I think is unusual bits of criticism I've had is people have said to me, you make marathon training sound like it's impossible. And I always think back to a meme stroke quote that I saw many years ago, which always stays with me. It's probably my favourite running one, which is, you don't train for the race not to hurt, you train so you can tolerate it. And when we say hurt, and when we talk about pain, we're not talking about your body is in pain. It's hurt something, as it were, not like you're injured. But it is a very physically taxing thing, a marathon. Now, that might be preaching to the choir for some of you who've done them. But my job, I feel, is to be honest with people and realistic with people. And to be fair, that's what helps a lot of people gravitate towards me. Because I am honest and I am realistic about what I think is required to run a marathon. That's not to say there aren't different ways of training and there aren't different approaches. And also, one thing that's also very important with marathon training is flexibility. You have to be flexible with your plan, because if you've got a family, for example, or a demanding job, whatever it might be, and you can't do the runners as they're set out week by week, then of course you've got to have some element of flexibility in there. But flexibility aside, everybody's got to run 26.2, 42 kilometers, 26.2 miles, 42 kilometers at the end of it. So that's the great leveler. And I was listening to the Marathon Talk podcast the other day, which you should listen to. It's very good. And Martin on there said the marathon is the great leveler. He said, when everyone gets to the start line, you're all in the same boat. Whether you're doing a 2-hour marathon or an 8-hour marathon, everybody's got to run the same distance. So the marathon is the great leveler. So you have to get yourself in the right physical and mental mindset to be able to deal with it, particularly if it's your first one. And I think you do that by putting yourself in a fatigued state. because that's what marathon running is. If you're going to run 26 miles and you've never run 26 miles before, and you won't run 26 miles in training, then you are going to be tired. And there are going to be parts of that run, particularly when you start to hit over, I think usually over 15, 16 is when it starts to get interesting, because most people that run a marathon have probably done a half before. I think when you get over half distance, that's when it starts to get interesting, and that's when we start to get serious. And you've got to condition yourself physically and mentally to deal with that part of the race. So that's what the peak weeks are for. The peak weeks are about volume. So literally, I think I did 3 weeks of, say, 55 to 64 miles on the bounce. And was it hard? Yes. I think one of the weeks was half term, and my son was at home, of course, and my wife had to work because she can't just take every single half term off. And I had to sort of do the honours alongside a peak week of training. So I'm actually glad that happened, because it taught me a lot about myself and it taught me a lot about what I'm capable of. But it also showed me the importance of doing those weeks, and they are tough. And one of the things that I've said to my guys in the running coaching program is, whilst I've got empathy for you and it's challenging, it's there for a reason, and it's there to build the marathon runner. The marathon runner is built in the difficult and adverse parts of a training program. That's when the marathon runner is built. So you're not built in the easy bits, you're not built in the first bit, and you're certainly not built in the taper. You're built in those peak weeks when it gets really, really tasty. And that's why a marathon training plan should reflect the difficulty of a marathon. There are marathon training plans where you don't necessarily have to run 20 miles in training. I don't subscribe to that myself personally. I think it's not good, especially if you're a first timer. I think you need to know what 20 miles feels like over and above time, which I've said before, because I think if the marathon's going to take you 6 hours, I don't see how running for 3 is going to help you. But running 20 miles in one go is going to really give you the bulk of the marathon. Because let's be honest, if you're doing a big marathon in April, one of the well-supported ones, the last 5 to 10K, there'll be a lot of adrenaline. If you're doing London, for example, the crowd in the last, 10K is amazing, and it will sort of carry you through a lot of the time. It's very supportive. So the peak weeks are there for a reason, and it's normal in those peak weeks to have those wobbles, to have those concerns, because it is a lot. And you will question yourself potentially, and you will doubt yourself, but the answer is never to back away from it, and the answer is never to resent it to a certain degree, because that's what's going to build you. It's okay to have those emotions. I've done a podcast before called The Resentful Runner, which, is my belief that during a marathon training cycle, I do believe at some point, if you're doing it properly, you will hate running a little bit. And I think in the peak weeks, you're going to have that, but that's normal, but that's to manage it. But that's when you've got a compelling vision of what you're about to do and what's going to happen, then that's going to help you get through those weeks. And that's why they're there for a reason. And when you look at a marathon training plan, it's easy to have that dread of, oh no, I can't, I don't really want to do weeks 10 to 14. But what you've got to remember is that a well-constructed marathon training plan is that for a reason. It is well constructed for a reason, to give you the full experience through 16 weeks of what to expect on the day. And one of the biggest surprises that people get, and I've had over the years, is where I've thought myself, well, how do you run, if you don't ever run 26 miles in training at the pace you're going to run it at, how do you do it? And you just do it. And then when you do it on the day, you get this inner sense of, this is why I did all that work. This is why I did all those runs. This is why I did those 3 weeks. This is why I made the trade-offs. This is why I was organised and I was disciplined, and why I wasn't the way most people are with fitness, which is I'll go to the gym when I feel like it. I'll go for a run when I feel like it. No, I am going to follow this plan. So if you're in the place at the moment where you're either in the middle of or you're coming into your peak weeks, they're there for a reason. And just remember, particularly the long runs in these weeks, they're your most important run. If it's your first marathon, in my opinion, the 20 miler is the important one. And that will teach you everything you need to know in training of what to expect on the day. That's a bold statement, but that's what I always did, because when I didn't follow plans for my first 5 to 6 marathons, a friend of mine just said, just do 20-mile runs. So I think I did 3 for 1. I just said, right, I need to run 20. So I did that. And that got me round. And I was getting personal bests back in 2015 when I did 5 marathons in a year, when I was doing them within 5 weeks of each other without following proper plans, because I knew I had to do the right volume and I knew I had to look at the important runs. So whilst it's incredibly challenging, this is a marathon, and marathons are supposed to be incredibly challenging. And the whole point of having the plan the way it's laid out is to get you ready and is to build the marathon runner. The marathon runner is built in the peak weeks. And as a little bit of reassurance, the good thing about the way a proper marathon training plan is set out is that the peak weeks always are a precursor to the tapering. So you've then got that time to recover. And then you've done the hard miles. Yeah? So it's that's what's called the hard miles. So the first thought I always have when I get to tapering is the hard miles are done. It's now time just to keep myself ticking, refine, and get myself ready for the day. So the key message I want to take away from today, particularly if you are doing an end of April, beginning of May marathon, and you're into the really tasty bit of training and it's a little bit much for you, know this is what counts and know it's worthwhile, even though it's tough. And in these weeks, if you are struggling a little bit, it's not about bravado, it's not about hurting yourself, and it's certainly not about, putting yourself in a position where you really, really hate the whole process. It's about saying what's important here. And what's important are the bigger distance runs, particularly if it's your first marathon. The bigger distance runs are the most important because, like I said before, they're going to get you ready both physically and mentally for the day itself. So if you've got a marathon maybe in the autumn, and again, it's your first one, this is, again, when you get your marathon training plan and you see those peak weeks, understand what they're there for, and they're there for a reason, and they're not to be feared because that's what's important, yeah? You can't blag a marathon, that's what I've always said. I think most people who are relatively fit, who can run a bit, could probably blag a half without much training. I can blag a half, quote unquote, without much training. But a marathon's a different beast. And my job, or I feel my mission, is not only for the people that I coach, but also for the guys listening to this, is to make sure that I get you ready and get you understanding the importance of why these things exist and why they're there. Because they're there for a reason, okay? And it's okay to be overwhelmed. It's okay to be tired. It's okay to be a little bit bitter and resentful that you do all this running. That's all part of the process. Anybody that says marathon training is easy or they just fly through it or float through it is, that's not even the athletes, because they do ridiculous amount of miles. So this is the hard bit, but it's there for a reason. And always remember that marathon training is tough. The peak weeks of marathon training are tough. But so are you, because you entered one. If you've entered a marathon, there's a little bit of you that knows deep down that you can do this. Otherwise, you wouldn't have entered it. And I need you to remember that when you're going through a difficult patch, particularly if you're going through your peak weeks and you're doubting yourself, you're questioning yourself, everything hurts, you're tired, you're hungry and all those things, because that's just part of the process. But this is when the marathon runner is built. And I need you to remember that. So yeah, that is peak week panic. It's fine. It's normal. If you need any support or help, make sure to reach out and I'll do my best to give you as much support as I possibly can. All right. So, yeah, that's episode 38, 12 Months to Marathon podcast. As always, don't forget to hop over to Instagram and follow me over there, 12 Months to Marathon. You can always get in touch if you're looking for any running coaching, looking for any support over there. I'd appreciate it. Just go and comment or message me with 26.2. And I'll know you're after a bit of support, and we can have a chat and we'll see if and how we can help. If we can, fantastic. If we can't, at least you asked the question. Don't forget to like and share this podcast. The star ratings on Spotify are really, really helpful if you use Spotify, or the ratings on Apple as well. So please feel free to drop it a quick review. That makes a big difference, and a quick like and share as well also makes a massive difference to me. So I appreciate your support very, very much. Good luck if you are doing a marathon soon. I'll be in touch over the next couple of weeks with these podcasts to help you guys if you're doing one at the end of the month. But just remember, the plan exists for a reason. It's meant to build a marathon runner, and marathon training and marathons are tough, but so are you. And I've got all the faith in the world that you can do it. So thank you very much again for listening. I do appreciate it, and I'll speak to you all very soon.